Thanks, Alexander. Hi, everyone. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Alexander, for having me. Thanks, everyone, for listening. This is School Choice and Segregation. This is joint work with Leonel Huerta, who is a master's student in the University of Chile. So the motivation for this paper is the following. There is, there are several recent school choice programs around the world using centralized procedures to assign students to schools based on the fair acceptance algorithm. These programs have resulted in assignment processes that are considered very successful, both in academia and in policy circles. However, I think that our understanding of the impact of several design decisions on segregation in schools and other market outcomes is rather limited. And the main goal of this paper is to explore some of the trade-offs that policymakers and market designers face when trying to reduce segregation in schools by using affirmative action policies. So this paper is going to combine both a simple theoretical model and some field data. We are going to explore the role of affirmative action policies in a very simple large market model. And we're going to derive several comparative statistics results about the impact of minority reserves on several market outcomes. Our main theoretical results are going to be about the impact of minority reserves. We will show that minority reserves reduce segregation in schools, increase the number of students assigned to the top choice. They are also going to reduce the number of Pareto improving pairs. So in a sense, minority reserves are going to make the system more efficient. And minority reserves also increase the number of students assigned to unattractive schools or unassigned. And that's the main cause of introducing minority reserves on market outcomes. This is a theory. We're going to confirm each of these theoretical findings using simulations from Chilean school choice system. We're going to use data from the application processes in the main cities in Chile, and we're going to confirm these predictions, these theoretical predictions. In quantitative terms, minority reserves can reduce segregation and are an effective tool to reduce segregation, and the impact that they have on the number of students assigned to unattractive schools or unassigned is rather small. So I think it might make sense to consider minority reserves in applications. So let me just go super quick to the model. This is a large market model. There is a continuum of students. There is a measure one of regular students, a measure beta of minority students. There is a finite number of schools. The schools are in two tiers. Tier one schools are like the popular schools. Tier two schools are like the unpopular schools. A tier I school has capacity KI, and the system is feasible. Preferences are going to be super simple. A fraction alpha T of group T students is going to apply uniformly to LT, tier one schools. And the rest of the students is just going to apply to tier two schools. So the assumption here is that, as I said, that tier one schools are over demanded, right? So there is excess demand for tier one schools. A student at each school is going to draw a score independently from a distribution GT. And the assumption here is that regular students tend to have higher scores than minority students. So in the model, there are several assumptions, but a very important assumption in the model is that minorities apply less to popular schools. And we capture this by assuming that alpha M is less than alpha R and LM is less than LR. One implication from this assumption is that minorities are going to be underrepresented in tier 1 schools. There is evidence from Amsterdam and Boston about how minorities apply less to high demand to popular schools. I also have here some graphs showing application patterns in the Chilean centralized systems. Here I have data from the 3 main cities, Valparaiso, Concepción, and Santiago. For each school C, we compute the popularity of the school as the ratio of the number of students listing the school first over the total number of seats. So we are going to have some schools that are super popular, other schools are not very popular. And then for each group in each city, we compute the CDF, the cumulative distribution function of the popularity of the schools listed first. So here, for example, for Santiago, we have the CDF for the regular students in dotted lines. We have the CDF for the minority students in continuous line. You can see that regular students tend to apply to high popularity schools much more than minority students. And the same it is the same result for other cities. We have also run some tests, so this is not just about pictures. Right. We also get the same result when we consider the school listed second, but conditional on listing first a school with popularity above 1. So conditional on listing first a very popular school, we just look at the school listed second, and as you can see again, like regular students tend to apply more to popular schools once again. So this is the evidence supporting the idea that minorities do not really apply to high demand popular schools. So we're going to characterize matchings using cutoffs. So we're going to characterize a stable matching using the cutoff bar P. So the cutoff bar P should, solve a market clearing condition for tier 1 schools. So what we have here is like given the cutoff is the total demand for tier 1 schools. There is a unique cutoff that solves this equation, and therefore there is unique stable matching. Under this unique stable matching, minorities are underrepresented in tier 1 schools, because essentially the main driver of that is the fact that minorities apply less to tier 1 schools, to popular schools. So we consider minority reserves, row 1 in tier 1 schools. Now we have like 2 conditions that determine the group specific cutoffs, PR for regular students and PM for minority students. The first condition is essentially the same market clearing condition, but now we have like a type specific cutoff. So we have a PR here and a PM here for minority students. And the second condition is the condition saying that the number of minority students in each tier 1 school should equal the reserve. So here we're considering minority reserve. In the paper, we also do simulation for set aside reserves. And we also have theoretical results for set aside reserves. Essentially, we get like very similar results when we interpret reserves as set aside. So these two conditions determine like a unique pair of cutoffs. And let me just talk about how the minority reserves rule one impact several market outcomes. The first one is the segregation in the system. So there are several ways to, yeah.
I'm sorry, before you go into segregation, something that just to understand, what is your take on these kind of like differences in the application patterns, right? Like, so minority students tend to do not apply to overseas subscribed schools or popular schools. I think the empirical literature has been analyzing this and explaining it more from the perspective of they have biased beliefs about their admission chances. They face maybe some uncertainty, or at least in their heads, even if there is not a lot of uncertainty, they still think that they have no possibility maybe. So, but in the end, in the model, you're going to have this Acevedo-Leschno kind of structure that I think is going to kind of like eliminate all uncertainty in cutoffs, right? So are you going to be kind of like loading all of these patterns into preferences? Like they have differential preferences?
Right. I mean, I am a bit agnostic about why exactly they apply differently. It could be because of information. I also, if you see the case of Chile and also the case of Boston, I think that minority students tend to live farther away from like top schools. So
okay.
that could be another reason.
Yeah.
Okay. I am agnostic about why you know there are these differences in application patterns.
So your results do not depend on having completely different preferences for the both sides.
I mean, they have completely they have different preferences, but why they apply differently, it is not important for what I'm doing. It could be information. Okay. It could be like transportation cost. It could be that they just don't like, for whatever reason, like these schools.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we have the Duncan. So we measure segregation using the Duncan index. We also have results for other indexes in the paper. The Duncan index is computed as 1/2 the sum over all schools of the absolute value of the difference between the number of regular students in the school minus the number of minority students in the school. So when the Duncan index is 0, we have a perfect integration. When the Duncan index is 1, we have perfect segregation. And the result here is that the Duncan index is not increasing over row 1 less than this number, and it's not decreasing over row 1 greater than or equal to this number. So what this result is really saying is that segregation is minimized when the number of seats reserved for minority students in each school equals the share of minority students in the population. So the share of minority students in the population is beta over 1 plus beta. So reserves are useful for reducing segregation. So let me just briefly mention some results about the rank distributions. So we compute the cumulative rank distribution for type D students as the total number for each Q. This is the total number of students that get one of their top Q schools. And the result here is that like the obvious one, that, you know, whenever like we increase minority reserves, minority students are going to be better off. They're going to be assigned to more top schools. and regular students are going to be worse off. The rank distribution is going to be putting more weight on a low-ranked school. So that the impact of minority reserves on each group. But our main results are about the total impact, like over the whole population of students in the system. So we compute the total cumulative rank distribution as FQ. This is FQ, and this measures the fraction of students assigned to one of their top Q schools. And the result here is about how the minority reserve impacts this total rank distribution. So suppose that K1 is not too large, then there exists some bar Q such that for all Q less than bar Q, the distribution is increasing in row 1, right? The number of students assigned to one of the top Q schools increases in row 1. But for Q greater than bar Q, the number of students assigned to one of the top Q schools is decreasing. So this result is saying that, that in particular is saying that more students are assigned to the top schools when we increase row 1. And there is like a direct effect, which is that increasing row 1, we are going to have regular students that are replaced by minorities in tier 1 schools, and minorities are more likely to put that school first, right, in a high in the application. So that's like a direct effect of increasing reserves. But there are also like system-wide effects, and the observation here is that increasing row 1 creates competition for a tier 1 school C among regular students, and there are two main channels for this. The first one is that regular students displaced from schools other than C apply to school C. That creates competition in school C. And there is also another force, which is that some regular students are displaced from school C. Those regular students apply to other schools, they displace other students in other schools, and those students apply to school C. So there are these system-wide effects, and when K1 is large, there is going to be very little competition among regular students because, K1 is large, and therefore cutoffs are going to be close to 0. But when we increase row 1, we are going to activate both of these forces, and therefore the cutoffs for regular students are going to increase a lot, and therefore much fewer regular students are going to be assigned to the top schools. So that explains why we need that the system is relatively tight to have this positive effect of reserves on the number of students assigned to top schools. The result also shows that more students are assigned to low-ranking schools. So it is not that by increasing reserves, you are going to improve in the first order stochastic sense the total rank distribution. So there is no first order stochastic improvement in the distribution just by moving the reserves. So how much time I have? Not much, right?
You have 4 minutes.
4 minutes. Okay, so let me just. Efficiency, of course, like increasing reserves does not really result in Pareto improvements. We compute the total measure of students that are in a Pareto improving pair, and under the conditions of the previous proposition, the measure of students that are in the Pareto improving pair is decreasing in row 1. So increasing reserves somehow, like according to this measure, increasing reserves improves the efficiency of the system. So let me just now show you some evidence from the Chilean system. In Chile, students are assigned to schools by the fair acceptance. There are multiple lotteries, so each school ran its own lottery. The rank order lists are unrestricted, so students can put like any number of schools in the applications. Poor students are considered minorities, and there is an objective evaluation of the economic condition of the students. And according to the current system, minority reserves equal 15% of seats in each school. We run simulations for the 3 main cities in the country for students applying to pre-kinder. You know, Santiago is the largest city. We have like almost 50,000 families in the system. 37% of students in Santiago are poor students, are minority students. Concepción, Valparaiso, each of them has around like 7,000 students, and minority students are close to 44%. For each market, we simulate the matching with several reserves. So here we have the results. Here we have the results for Santiago. Each of our main comparative statics results is confirmed by the simulations. The Duncan index is U-shaped, right? It decreases up to this fraction, which is the fraction of minority students in the city, and then it increases. You know, the minority reserves favor minority students and do not favor regular students. The students assigned to the top choice, the percentage of students assigned to the top choice is increasing in the reserve from 61 to 65. If you fix the reserve equal to 75%. The students assigned to the fourth choice or worse is also increasing. So this is the cost of minority reserves. The students unassigned also increase with the number of the number of seats reserved for minority students. This is also consistent with our proposition, and the system becomes more efficient. The number of students in Pareto improving pairs is decreasing in the number of seats reserved. So in terms of course, here there are like trade-offs. So how should policymakers decide on the minority reserve? Of course, that depends on how much we care about segregation, how much we care about the students unassigned. But let me just show you that minority reserves, here I have the data, the simulations for the 3 cities, but minority reserves can decrease like a lot, like from 0.35 to 0.25 in Santiago, the Duncan index. So that's an important reduction in the Duncan index. But the main cost, which is like having more students unassigned, does not increase that much. You know, it goes from 12.5 to around 12.7. You know, when we fix the minority reserve equal to the fraction of minority students in the system. So
can you please wrap up in 1 minute?
Yeah, yes, sure. So let me just conclude. Segregation in schools is pervasive in cities around the world. School choice programs can be a tool to fight segregation in schools. Our results show that affirmative action policies may be useful for policymakers who want to reduce segregation in schools. The reducing segregation may also improve some measures of efficiency, but leaves more students unassigned. I think that these patterns of different patterns of applications between minority students and regular students are also present in other markets. So I hope that these results can also be applied in settings other than the Chilean one that I explored here. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So we have a break now for 13 minutes, and then we're back for our keynote talk today. Thank you, everyone.